Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission. Thank you today for joining us in a joint proceeding for dockets number 2022-151WS, 2022-161W, 2022-166-W, 2022-167W. Before we begin, I'd like to take a roll call of commissioners. Here in the hearing room, we have Commissioner Caston, Commissioner C. Williams, Commissioner Thomas, and Vice Chair Powers. Joining us virtually, Commissioner Irvin and Commissioner J. Williams. Commissioner Belser is on leave this morning. I would ask Ms. Clausen if she would read the docket at this time.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Good morning, commissioners and parties. We are here today in docket number 2022-151-WS, joint application for approval of the sale of assets and transfer of facilities, territory, and certificate of public convenience and necessity from Total Environmental Solutions, Incorporated, to CSWR, South Carolina Utility Operating Company, LLC. Docket number 2022-161-W, joint application for approval of the sale of assets and transfer of facilities, territory, and certificate of public convenience and necessity from AAA Utilities, Incorporated, to CSWR, South Carolina Utility Operating Company, LLC, with attached proposed notice. Docket number 2022-166-W, joint application for approval of the sale of assets and transfer of facilities, territory, and certificate of public convenience and necessity from Hamilton Haynes Waterworks to CSWR, South Carolina Utility Operating Company, LLC, and request for waiver of formal hearings. And docket number 2022-167-W, joint application for approval of the sale of assets and transfer of facilities, territory, and certificate of public convenience and necessity from Hyde Park Waterworks, Incorporated, to CSWR, South Carolina Utility Operating Company, LLC. These proceedings today on November the 8th, 2022 at 10 o'clock a.m. All parties are available and the docket is in order.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll now take appearances from the parties. Who's here for the applicant?
Vice Chair Powers and Commissioners, I'm Jack Pringle here on behalf of the joint applicants.
Okay, and ORS?
Vice Chair Powers, members of the Commission, good morning. Nicole Given on behalf of the Office of Regulatory Staff. Present with me in the hearing room this morning is Ben Muschin.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any preliminary matters in this case we need to discuss?
Vice Chair Powers, there are a couple, and they sort of reflect some of the work that's been done getting us here to the hearing. And I guess the first that I'd want to mention is that in all four of these dockets that have been consolidated for hearing, that I'll refer to as the Tessie case, the AAA case, the Hamilton Haynes case, and the Hyde Park case, and those are all for water and or wastewater systems. Tessie is actually water and wastewater. The other three are water. In those four dockets, the parties of record have entered into stipulations resolving any outstanding issues that they had in the case. For the Tessie case, 151WS, well, all four dockets and all four stipulations included the Office of Regulatory Staff as a statutory party. The Tessie case also included the Foxwood Hills Property Owners Association, which had intervened in that particular docket, And so they are a party to that stipulation. In the other three stipulations, it's the ORS and the joint applicants because there were no other interveners in those cases. So the first thing that I would like to do is to move the stipulations, which have previously been filed in all four dockets, but to move those, the stipulations, or have them become a part of the hearing record for today.
All right. Mr. Pringle, could you identify them
Oh, sure.
each?
Each in docket number, and I need to go back over to my podium because the staff has upbraided me for being unduly peripatetic. The first is in 2022-151 WS, and that is a stipulation between the Office of Regulatory Staff, the Foxwood Property Owners Association, Total Environmental Solutions, Central States Water Resources, Inc., and CSWR South Carolina Utility Operating Company, LLC.
All right. I think we should probably enter those into the record separately.
Okay,
I'll let that first one be entered in the record as hearing exhibit number 1.
all right. Thank you. And the second is a stipulation in docket number 2022-161 W. And that stipulation is between the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff, AAA Utilities, Inc., Central States Water Resources, Inc., and CSWR South Carolina Utility Operating Company, LLC.
Okay. Stipulation in 2022-161W shall be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 2.
Thank you. And likewise, in docket number 2022-166W, the stipulation is between the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff, Hamilton Haynes Water Works, Central States Water Resources, Inc., and CSWR South Carolina Utility Operating Company, LLC.
All right. Stipulation in 2022-166W will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 3.
Thank you. And finally, in docket number 2022-167-W, the stipulation is between the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff, Hyde Park Water Works Incorporated or Inc., Central States Water Resources, Inc., and CSWR South Carolina Utility Operating Company, LLC.
Okay. As to 2022-167W, the stipulation will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 4. And I must ask ORS, is there any objection to those 4 exhibits?
No objection, Vice Chair Powers.
Okay.
Thank you.
I apologize for not asking you as we go. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any further preliminary matters?
In fact, Vice Chair Powers, there are a couple, and I'll probably enlist counsel for ORS to do this somewhat collaboratively. As part of their the stipulations into which the parties entered and agreed, particularly the ORS and the joint applicants agreed to stipulate previously filed, pre-filed testimony in this case, both of the joint applicants' witnesses and the ORS's witnesses. Just for purposes of context, we have witnesses today that are going to give settlement testimony, one from the ORS and one from the joint applicants. But the parties proposed to stipulate the pre-filed testimony, and along with that, each of those witnesses have included verifications for their testimony such that if the commission were agreeable that all that pre-filed testimony would be stipulated into the record. So I think our proposal to do that as a procedural or a mechanical manner is to just mention or identify the various testimonies
Okay.
in
And
order
all-
to do that, if that,
All of these witnesses that are not appearing, all of the testimony is verified.
that is correct.
Verification.
That is
Okay.
correct, and those will not, and the only caveat to that is that there are two people, Josiah Cox and Dawn Hipp, who filed pre-filed testimony and are actually appearing, but they are appearing to give their settlement testimony.
That's fine.
Right.
Any objections from ORS?
No objection.
Could we go through those individually, please?
The first would be in 2022 151 WS, and that would be the direct testimony of Josiah Cox,
Okay.
which, and I was going to also identify the exhibits that are contained in that. That testimony consists of 31 pages, and it also has one, three, four, it has 5 exhibits attached to it.
Okay. And also, I think there's some rebuttal
That's
testimony.
correct. Yes, I was gonna, I get the direct testimony of 31 pages and 5 direct hearing exhibits, and then rebuttal testimony consisting of 33 pages that also has, I'm not sure that I don't believe it has any exhibits, but 33 pages of rebuttal testimony.
Okay. This pre-filed testimony, is there any reason we couldn't put it all in as a composite exhibit, or
I think
each
that
person?
would be, I could certainly identify it all if that made sense.
Each person?
Okay, yes,
Well, we're gonna do it the other way then. The pre-filed testimony of witness Cox and his 5 exhibits will be entered to the record as though given from the stand. We entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 5.
okay. And likewise, there was 33 pages of rebuttal testimony.
Okay. The rebuttal testimony will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit 6.
Okay. Since we're still on, and this, subject to the commission's pleasure, since we're still on 2022 151 WS, does it make sense for additional testimony in that docket to be identified before we move on to the next docket?
Yes, is there any objection from ORS?
No objection.
All right.
Okay, that's, then from our perspective, there was rebuttal testimony in 2022 151 WS of Wayne Owens on behalf of Total Environmental Solutions, and there are 6 pages of that testimony.
All right. Rebuttal testimony of Wayne Owens consisting of 6 pages will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 7.
Okay, then I think I turn it over to Ms. Given for the ORS witnesses in that docket.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. In docket number 2022-151 WS, we have first 20 pages of pre-filed corrected direct testimony of Dawn M. Hipp, as well as Exhibit DMH1, which was filed on September 20th, 2022. And I will note that there are confidential and redacted versions of that testimony.
That's correct. The testimony, both redacted And other testimony and exhibits of Dawn M. Hip will be entered into the record as here exhibit number 8.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Also in that docket, we have 26 pages of pre-filed direct testimony of Daniel P. Hunnell II, as well as his exhibits DMH1 through DMH7, which was filed on September 7th, 2022. And again, there are confidential and redacted versions of that testimony as well.
All right. The 26 pages of testimony, both redacted and confidential, of witness Hunnell, along with the exhibits 1 through 7, will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 9.
And I will turn it back to Mr. Pringle.
Okay, now we're moving to docket number 2022-161W, the AAA docket. Mr. Cox had 35 pages of direct testimony and 5 exhibits.
All right, 35 pages of the witness Cox testimony in 2022-161W and his 5 exhibits shall be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 10.
Okay, and likewise in docket number 2022-161W, Mr. Cox had rebuttal testimony consisting of 19 pages as well as 3 rebuttal exhibits.
All right, the rebuttal testimony of witness Cox in 2022-161W as well, consisting of 19 pages as well as 3 exhibits, will be entered into the docket as exhibit number 11.
Okay, and in 2022-161W, there's also the rebuttal testimony of Jay Swearingen on behalf of AAA Utilities, and that consists of 3 pages of rebuttal testimony.
All right, the rebuttal testimony of Jay Swearingen consisting of 3 pages in docket 2022-161W will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit 12.
Okay, and now I'll turn it back over to
Any objection to any of these? Y'all discussed all these, have you not?
Yes, we have no objection, Vice Chair.
Okay.
and I'll turn it back over to Ms. Gibb.
This is like ping pong.
Continuing in docket number 2022-161W, there are 20 pages of pre-filed direct testimony from Dawn M. Hip, as well as exhibit DMH1, which was filed on September 16th, 2022.
The pre-filed testimony consists of 20 pages of Dawn Hip, as well as the exhibit mentioned will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 13.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Continuing in that docket, and I would also note, I'm sorry, so that the record's clear, there are confidential and redacted versions of Ms. Hip's testimony in that docket as well.
Certainly.
Continuing in that docket, there are also 22 pages of pre-filed direct testimony of Daniel P. Hunnell II, as well as exhibits DPH1 through DPH4, filed on September 16th, 2022, and again, confidential and redacted versions of that testimony as well.
All right, the 22 pages of the testimony of witness Hunnell in 2022-161W, as well as Hunnell exhibits DPH 1 through 4 will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 14.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay, and now moving to 2022-166W, the direct testimony of Josiah Cox consists of 35 pages of testimony as well as 5 direct testimony exhibits.
All right. The direct testimony consists of 35 pages of Josiah Cox in 2022-166W, as well as Cox exhibits JC 1 through 5 will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 15.
All right, thank you. And in 2022-166-W, the rebuttal testimony of Josiah Cox is 20 pages of rebuttal testimony.
All right, the rebuttal testimony of witness Cox consisting of 20 pages in the docket 2022-166W will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 16.
And then finally, in 2022-166W, the rebuttal testimony of Carolyn H. Smith on behalf of Hamilton Haynes Waterworks, which consists of 3 pages and no exhibits.
You said rebuttal testimony?
That would be rebuttal testimony, yes.
All right. The rebuttal testimony of Carolyn H. Smith consisting of 3 pages in docket number 2022-166W will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 17 without objection.
Correct, no objection.
And now we're back over to Ms. Gibbon.
For docket number 2022-166W, there are 20 pages of pre-filed direct testimony of Dawn M. Hipp, filed on September 16th, 2022, as well as Exhibit DMH1. And I'll note again that there are confidential and redacted versions of her testimony.
All right. The 20 pages of testimony of Dawn Hipp in 2022-166W, as well as HIP Exhibit DMH-1 will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 18.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Continuing in that docket, we also have 20 pages of pre-filed direct testimony of Daniel P. Hunnell II, as well as exhibits DPH1 through DPH4, filed on September 16th, 2022. And again, there are confidential and redacted versions of his testimony as well.
All right. The redacted and confidential testimony of witness Hunnell, consisting of 20 pages as well as 4 exhibits identified as DPH 1 through 4 will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 19.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers, and I will turn it back over to Mr. Pringle.
All right, and that brings us now to 2022-167W, the Hyde Park docket, and Mr. Cox had 35 pages of direct testimony along with 5 hearing exhibits labeled JC1 through JC5.
Okay, the 35 pages of testimony of witness Cox in 2022-167W, as well as Cox exhibits JC 1 through 5 will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit 20.
Okay, and then in that same docket, 2022-167W, Mr. Cox also filed rebuttal testimony consisting of 19 pages and no exhibits.
All right, the rebuttal testimony of witness Cox consisting of 22 pages, you said?
I think it's 19 pages.
19.
Yeah.
19 pages shall be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 21.
And then finally, from the joint applicants side in 2022-167W, the rebuttal testimony of Don Smith on behalf of Hyde Park Waterworks, Inc., and that direct testimony consists of 3 pages and no exhibits.
All right, the direct testimony of Don Smith on behalf of Hyde Park consisting of 3 pages in docket number 2022-167W will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 22.
Now back over to Ms. Gibbon.
Continuing in docket number 2022-167W, we have 20 pages of pre-filed direct testimony of Dawn M. Hipp, as well as exhibit DMH1 filed on September 16th, 2022. And again, confidential and redacted versions of her testimony.
Okay. The confidential and redacted versions testimony consisting of 20 pages of Dawn S. Hipp and exhibit DMH1 in docket number 2022-167W will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 23.
And finally, from the Office of Regulatory Staff, in the same docket, we have 22 pages of pre-filed direct testimony of Daniel P. Hunnell II, as well as exhibits DPH1 through DPH6, filed on September 16th, 2022. And again, there are confidential and redacted versions of his testimony as well.
The confidential redacted version of witness Hunnell's testimony consisting of 22 pages as well as exhibits DPH 1 through 6 will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 24.
And no additional testimony from ORS.
Okay. There's only one more preliminary matter, and over the course of these dockets on October 6th, and I'll refer to it as CSWR SC, which is going to be the operating entity, the affiliate entity of the CSWR companies, filed a request with the commission and asked in all of these dockets that it be allowed to maintain its books and records at its home office in Missouri. The commission may be aware there's a couple of rules, both in the water and wastewater rules areas, that speak of having to keep your books and records in South Carolina unless you otherwise get commission approval to keep them elsewhere. And one of the hearing officers, Ms. Moser, in this docket, instructed the parties that this request would also be considered as part of this consolidated hearing. So with that in mind, even though this has been previously filed in all four of these dockets, I'd like to ask that this request regarding maintenance of books and records that was filed on October 16th, 2022, be marked for identification and made a hearing exhibit as well.
All right, and it's my understanding that CSWRSC was incorporated in South Carolina back in March or April, sometime earlier this year.
Subject to check on the date, it certainly was. It is a South Carolina LLC set up for the purpose of owning and operating these systems.
Okay. This request, I think, will be entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 25. And I guess we'll have to consider that.
And that's all things preliminary as far as the joint applicants are concerned.
All right. Well, that's enough.
I'd agree with you. The witness for the joint applicants is Mr. Josiah Cox, who is appearing virtually. So if it's your pleasure to get things started, we can go ahead and get him sworn in and such.
Mr. Cox.
Yes, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
You could raise your right hand and ask the court reporter to swear you in, please.
Mr. Cox, do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, you're a witness.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Cox.
Good morning.
Can you just state your full name and your business address and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Josiah Cox. I'm the founder and president of Central States Water Resources and Central States Water Resources, South Carolina. My business address is 1630 DePere Road, Suite 140. That's St. Louis, Missouri, 63131.
All right. Did you cause to be pre-filed settlement testimony in this docket or these dockets, this proceeding consisting of 5 pages in question and answer format?
I did.
Do you have any additions, deletions, or changes to make to this pre-filed settlement testimony?
I do not.
Okay. If I asked you all the questions that appear in that pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Okay. Vice Chair Powers, I'd like to ask that the settlement testimony of Mr. Cox be read into the record as if given orally from the stand.
All right, the settlement testimony of Mr. Cox will be entered in the record as though giving from the stand.
Mr. Cox, did you also include an exhibit that comprised the 4 stipulations in these dockets that we've been discussing?
I did.
Okay. Vice Chair Powers, mindful that the stipulations have already been included in the record, but they are an exhibit to Mr. Cox's testimony. I'd ask, subject to your discretion, that his Exhibit 1 be marked for identification and entered in as a hearing exhibit.
All right, Exhibit 1 of Mr. Cox shall be entered into the record as
Right.
hearing Exhibit 26.
Right. These are the stipulations in all 4 dockets.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. If you could just tell the commission briefly about CSWR and what it does and what you're looking to do in South Carolina.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity to present before the commission today. Like I said earlier, I'm Josiah Cox. I'm the president and founder of Central States Water Resources, and thus the parent company of Central States Water Resources, South Carolina. Our company's mission is to bring safe, reliable, and environmentally sustainable water resources to every community in the U.S. A couple fun facts for everyone in the room. There are 86,000 water and sewer utilities in the United States. Only 460 of those utilities serve communities of 100,000 people or larger. There were, I think, 80,000 violations of the Clean Water Act last year. 70-some% of those were for communities that serve below 5,000 people. And the reason why I say all that is because the every community part of our mission is really big. So as a company, I founded this company to solve the problems facing small water and wastewater systems all over the country. And the systems before you today are indicative of the systems we see all over the country. We're in 10 states. If you all approve the application today, we'll be in our 11th state. At the end of this year, we'll be the 11th largest investor-owned water and wastewater utility in the United States. And what we've seen over and over again is there's small utilities throughout the country, typically in rural or ex-suburban areas, that are run by, operators, land developers, school bus drivers, even you name it. And these small utilities are struggling to meet modern EPA and state requirements for both environmental health and safety. The Clean Water Act, which governs all these small utilities, is an increasingly more stringent act over time. So that means a lot of these water wastewater systems were built 20, 30, 40 years ago, and they no longer meet modern EPA requirements. Beyond that, the level of reinvestment required to keep a utility to provide safe and adequate service is a lot. And these small utilities struggle with the technical, managerial, and financial means to be able to run these utilities. So, we're excited to be in South Carolina. Each of the utilities we have before you today have a myriad of issues, underinvestment, violations of Clean Water Act, a lack of adequate capacity, you name it. And we're excited to be able to remediate all those issues. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions you all have about the stipulation agreement. Good.
And if the commission approves these applications and allows CSWRSC to purchase and own these systems, will you commit that CSWRSC will comply with all applicable authority and rules and regulations and orders of this commission?
Absolutely, we will, as we've done in every other state we operate in.
Okay. You may have heard mention a little while ago about CSWRSC's request to be able to keep books and records in Missouri. Can you touch on that real quick?
Absolutely. One of the primary benefits that we provide to small water and wastewater systems is expertise, so the technical ability, managerial, in the sense that, we manage a ton of these and economies of scale that go along with their technical and managerial abilities. So we're able to provide, so day one, if we're allowed to purchase these South Carolina systems, the customers who've never had this before, stuff we kind of take for granted. You think 24-hour hotlines for emergency, online bill pay, website, social media communication, email communication with residents about, upcoming service events that are happening inside their utility. All of that will happen. And of course, all those activities are managed out of our corporate office so that we're able to do that in a cost-effective measure. We're always trying to mitigate rate impacts. So we're able to offer all these professional services because we're able to do it at such a large scale. So the reason why we want the books and records so we can have it here at our corporate offices is what we do everywhere in order to mitigate costs and pass on our expertise to the individual customers.
Okay, and in the event that the ORS needed, access to those books and records, your company would agree to provide them expeditiously and at your own cost, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That's all the questions that I have. Please answer any questions that the commissioners may have for you.
All right, any questions by commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
This is Commissioner Irvin.
thank you. Mr. Cox, welcome to South Carolina. It's good to have you with us today.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
I'm assuming that you are going to have operators at all these water systems that are certified by Department of Health and Environmental Control. Could you tell us a little bit about how you plan to staff the day-to-day operations, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've developed, because when I founded this company, we knew we were going to take over small water and wastewater systems that are geographically dispersed over large areas, right? It's one of the things that makes this technically challenging. And the way we solved for that was two ways. One, from the beginning of founding this company, we create a computerized maintenance management system. And that lives on the cloud. And how we do that, what we've already done in South Carolina is we go through this acquisition process. We launch surveying, GIS mapping, because most of these systems, there are no original plans and records. There are no existing utility line maps or anything like that. So we do GIS mapping, all that, and we catalog all the assets, right? Then then you have to use our computerized maintenance management system that ties into our customer information system so that's seamless. So if a customer calls in, they call into our call center. Let's say there's a water line break. That water line break is then, our call center issues a emergency work order. That work order goes to our contractors on the ground. They have to answer within 10 minutes. Roll trucks between 60 and 90 minutes to be on site. And we have a GIS tag with all our operators. So we're tracking real time their progression to get to the individual assets to fix those assets. And then from there, we do before and after pictures of the work that's done and then close loop with the customer. So that's the system in which we do it. And then we use third-party contractors to do that. And so we have already identified a number of, water and wastewater operators in South Carolina, some of which we've worked before nationally to do that work.
Very good. And talk to us just briefly about how you monitor water quality, please.
Absolutely. We do that multiple ways. Obviously, when we first buy these systems, there are no remote monitoring systems. There's no real-time testing going on, all of that. So obviously, we comply with state regulations, which are typically for wastewater systems, once a month testing, and for the water systems, daily for disinfection, and then annually for the full gamut spectrum of everything that's inside drinking water. Besides complying with that day one, later on we add remote monitoring equipment to these systems. So typically for the water systems that have disinfection, we'll do a calorimeter. So it gives us real-time 24-hour testing to make sure that our disinfection levels are correct to prevent pathogens getting the drinking water. And we do the same thing with the components of the wastewater system so that we know ahead of time if there's failures. We're already shipping people to work on the site before a customer calls in and knows there's an issue.
Very good. How about your system to notify the customers that you'll be serving? Do you have a plan in place to reach out to them and introduce your company to them and the services you provide?
Absolutely. And we do that in multiple different methods. We do traditional mailing, of course, to all the residents. We have a website that's specific to South Carolina that will stand up, that it will actually drill all the way down the community level. So you can get online and see what's happening in your community. We use social media. So we'll use both, Facebook, all that. We've Nextdoor before. And then for any service outages besides community, and we'll collect emails from the customers proactively as we send out notification. Here's who we are. Here's what we're doing in your community. We direct people to sign up, create their own customer portal. And then of course we'll do in-person door hangers, signage when required in some emergency situation. Because obviously our customers run the gamut from people who only get their information from a mailer to people who only read Facebook. And we try to meet that entire gamut of customers.
Well, that sounds great too, because that's so important, as you well know, to have good customer relations from the start and build trust and accountability. It reduces a lot of problems down the road, and we appreciate those efforts. What is the effective date of your takeover, so to speak?
It really depends on, if this is approved by the commission, we've already given our customer service contract to ORS and entered that in, and we'll have our third-party O&M contract before you. So we'd love to close before the end of the year, if possible. I mean, obviously, as expeditiously as we can is our goal.
Very good. Thank you for answering my questions. And Mr. Chair, I have no further questions this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Irvin. Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Good morning, Mr. Cox.
Morning, Commissioner.
Have you personally visited all these communities that are involved with these companies?
I've visited one of the systems in western South Carolina, the Foxwood system under Tessie is the one I visited there. I've been to a number of other systems in South Carolina that we hope to bring before you, but that's the only one before you today.
Okay. Are there any significant differences in the stipulations for these different dockets?
They were all exactly the same, sir.
Okay. So in connection with the Tessie docket, I see that there was some mention of the excess deferred income taxes in connection with the 2017 Tax Act, and it said that those funds would be refunded to customers prior to the closing. So what's the plan for the others?
I don't believe there are any other assets by the other companies for that particular tax act.
Okay. And in your opinion, do you believe that the books and records are adequate to enable the correct calculation of such things as the rate base and the capital structure and property records on a go-forward basis?
Yeah, we've agreed to enter in exactly the records as we've received them. And if we believe there's any modifications that need to be made to have those approved by ORS. And then beyond that, obviously, to keep all our books and records in NARUC Uniform System of Accounts.
Okay. And in connection with the, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, NITOR, NITOR billing services contract, do you believe that that is fair and reasonable for customers?
Absolutely, we do. Again, it speaks to our ability to scale our services and provide them at a much lower rate on an individual per customer basis. And it's a service we've used for, going on 9 years now, sir.
Okay. And are they allowed to sell customer data?
They are not.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Any other questions? Commissioner Caston.
Good morning, Mr. Cox.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Do you know the number of customers total and the number of customers per system?
I have that information before me. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can look it up on an individual basis if you'd like.
No, that's okay. I was at a ballpark.
A couple thousand.
Okay, total. And relative to, I guess, do you look at each system individually relative to cost and applicable charges and such, or?
Yeah, absolutely. We analyze every single system on a system by system basis, go through and look at, for example, the Tessie system, their wastewater, see on the wastewater system we're buying in the state, it's extremely degraded. It's an extended aeration plant with 3 trains. So we know exactly on an individual basis what improvements need to be done on that system to bring it back into compliance with the, applicable environmental laws. The same with all the other water systems. We look at every single system individually, every single component of the system individually to see what needs to be done.
So any rate setting or rate development would be based on that per individual system or uniformly?
So we have done both historically across the country. So we've done individual system level, we've done statewide tariffs, both. Our preference, we believe, the most appropriate for small systems is statewide tariffs, because every individual system is in a different time curve in terms of what improvements need to be made. So system A may cost more today than system B, but over a 10-year period, all the systems need the same amount of reinvestment. But obviously that's something we'd submit before the commission at some future date after we do a bunch of investment.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Cox. No more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Commissioner C. Williams.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Mr. Cox, good to see you and have you here today. I've got one question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Number 29 in the settlement testimony talks about all reasonable efforts to ensure the wasteful duplication and or gold plating of Tessie water and wastewater systems does not occur. I wondered why that one was illuminated separately from all of the others. Could you explain?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, can you ask that question different? Why it was eliminated, or can you say it one more time?
Illuminated was the word. It just drew extra attention to the Tessie system and talked about wasteful duplication and gold plating. And I guess as I read it, I would think that's a standard, but it was identified specifically for the Tessie system. So I just wanted to understand a little bit more about stipulation agreement number 29.
Got it. So the ORS requested that. As a company, I agree that is standard form for us. In fact, I would say one of the biggest differentiators between Central States and some of the larger publicly traded utility companies in the United States is we work very hard to rehabilitate systems rather than build new ones. So we've been very successful at doing structural repair work, utilizing existing tankage, all of that. I think on a dollar per dollar basis, our construction costs are much lower than industry average. But that was an ORS requirement. That is standard fare for our company.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Any further questions? All right, well, thank you for appearing today. You may step down from the witness stand.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Given.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. ORS would call Don M. Hip to the stand.
Oh, yeah.
Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ms. Hip, good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your full name for the record.
Certainly. My name is Dawn M. Hip.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the state of South Carolina, and I serve at my extreme pleasure as the Chief Operating Officer at the Office of Regulatory Staff.
And are you the same Dawn Hip who caused to be pre-filed 4 pages of settlement testimony consolidated for these proceedings on November 2nd, 2022?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your pre-filed settlement testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions today as those posed in your pre-filed settlement testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
At this time, Vice Chair, I would ask that the pre-filed settlement testimony of Dawn M. Hip be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed settlement testimony of Dawn S. Hip will be entered into the record as though given from the stand.
Thank you. Ms. Hip, would you provide an overview of the terms of the stipulation filed for these dockets to the Commission?
Certainly. We are pleased to bring the stipulations in front of you today. They are a result of earnest, good faith, and complex negotiations amongst the parties. And the parties, by the way, have diverse interests. In the spirit of collaboration, each of the settling parties made compromises from their original positions to achieve a balanced resolution of all the issues in the sale of assets and transfer of facilities, service territories, and certificates of public convenience and necessity from the sellers to CSWR SC and CSWR Incorporated. The compromises among the settling parties demonstrate collective support for the continuation of reliable and high-quality water and sewer service to the customers in the service territories. ORS appreciates the transparent and robust discussions of all parties, and we request that the Commission approve the stipulations as filed here this morning.
Ms. Hip, is it ORS's position that these stipulations are in the public interest?
Yes, it is.
For the benefit of the Commission, could you briefly explain why it's ORS's position that these stipulations are in the public interest?
ORS feels that the stipulations detail a supportive framework for the asset sale and transfer of facilities and certificates of public convenience, provide the customers with quantifiable merger benefits and efficiencies, which include but are not limited to lower costs and service improvements.
And Ms. Hip, would you explain some of the more unique terms contained in the stipulations for the Commission?
Certainly. In addition to provisions designed to ensure compliance with Commission rules and regulations, the stipulations include commitments from CSWR SC to mitigate the risk of additional cost, ensure all operations, maintenance, and capital investments are in furtherance of maintaining the basic functions of water and wastewater systems, and accrue material benefits to the customers. CSWR SC also has agreed not to file a general rate case that would impact customers located within the company's service territories prior to 12 months after the date of the Commission order in these dockets. Additionally, several items addressed by the stipulations ensure that the settling parties benefit from enhanced transparency and increased communication around the company's long-term infrastructure improvements, CSWR SC's activities in Foxwood Hills, and customer complaints. To mitigate the risk of additional costs to customers related to the acquisition, CSWR SC committed to not seek recovery from customers of any acquisition premium or goodwill associated with the sale of the assets, transfer of facilities, and certificates of public convenience and necessity, or transaction costs in excess of certain dollar amounts in these proceedings or in any future proceeding. The specific dollar amounts attributed to transaction costs are outlined in my direct testimony and in the stipulations in each docket. In addition, the company agreed to certain limitations related to the accounting records at the time of closing of the sale, and should changes to the accounting records be necessary, the company shall seek Commission approval. To increase transparency, CSWR SC has committed to file the balance sheet and supporting general ledger with the Commission to demonstrate the ending and beginning balances as of the date of acquisition. The settling parties agreed that certain ring fencing provisions would be necessary to financially protect the customers of CSWR SC from the financial activities of the holding company, CSWR Inc., or any other affiliated entity owned by CSWR Inc. To increase transparency and enhance communications, CSWR will provide a capital update to ORS on an annual basis to detail the capital improvements made, including all repair, replacement, or new additional infrastructure projects planned for the preceding 12 months, the 12-month period, and their estimated costs. Additionally, CSWR SC will implement systems designed to monitor customer complaints concerning the charges, practices, facilities, or service of the company and track resolution of the complaints to ensure that they are timely and effectively addressed. And they will provide quarterly reports to this commission and ORS to identify the efforts that they have made to improve responsiveness and customer satisfaction.
Thank you, Ms. Hipp. And have you been present for the entirety of the proceedings this morning?
I have.
And I believe Mr. Pringle alluded to, and Mr. Cox provided some testimony earlier about the joint applicants seeking commission authority to keep books and records in Missouri. Are you aware of that?
I am.
Could you give the commission ORS's position on this request from the joint applicants?
Based on the request made by the company on October 6th, ORS does not object to the company keeping its books and records at its headquarters in Missouri. It is stated and it is demonstrated to ORS through the discovery process in these cases that it can provide those records in a timely manner.
Thank you, Ms. Hipp. Vice Chair Powers, at this time, Ms. Hipp is available for questions from the commission.
Thank you, Ms. Givens, and thank you, Ms. Hipp. Any commissioner questions?
Vice Chair Powers.
Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you, sir. Good morning. How are you
morning.
today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Just going to basically ask you a few of the same questions that I asked Mr. Cox. So in connection with the TESI and the excess deferred income taxes, he indicated that the other entities did not have that issue to deal with. Does ORS agree?
Mr. Cox is correct. Only the TESI entity has a tax liability related to the excess revenue. The other utilities are small, have had their rates set at differing times and fall under different tax percentages, so to speak, and do not have an excess revenue situation that needs to be returned to customers.
Okay. And do you believe that the books and records are sufficient to move forward for correct rate making in the future? Anything from rate base to depreciation to capital structure and all the other parts that come into play?
The books and records of the entities that are being acquired, we can see through the annual reports filed with the commission. In review of the annual reports that have been filed with the commission over time, we see where there may be some issues that will crop up in a rate setting proceeding. Again, some of these companies have not been in for a rate case since their rates were established. And so you see certain provisions in the stipulation that require the filing of the accounting books and records with the commission at the end of, let's just use TESI for example, TESI's ownership and at the beginning of CSWR's ownership. We will look carefully at the books and records when the company comes in for a subsequent rate increase and make adjustments at that time based on what we're able to review and verify.
Okay. And again, the billing services contract with NITOR, do you believe that that is fair and reasonable for customers?
I'm not able to render an opinion on the NITOR billing contract. It was recently filed with the commission in a docket. We will have some discovery for the company on that before the agency ORS is able to render an opinion on the NITOR billing contract.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Caston?
Morning, Ms. Hipp.
Good morning.
Is ORS confident that CSWR SC is competent and adequately capitalized and funded to own and manage these systems?
We are confident with approval of the stipulation that the company will be able to provide service to the customers in an adequate manner. The provisions of the stipulation give us the necessary protections to review the company's activities and make sure that our customers here in South Carolina experience the benefits that the company has promised.
Thank you, ma'am. No more questions.
You're welcome.
Commissioner C. Williams.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Good morning.
Good morning.
My questions won't surprise you at all. The first has to do with ORS's support for the records to be held in Missouri. Is that becoming a standard practice with out of state companies?
I would say it is, yes.
Okay. And regarding Tessie and the stipulation number 29 and the particular concern about wasteful duplication and or gold plating, can you add any more context to that stipulation?
Yes, Commissioner, I can. The stipulation provision number 29 related to Tessie is actually reflected in each of the stipulations. So each one of the companies has that provision. In reviewing the company's experience across the U.S. and concerns we had with certain types of investments being brought forward to the commission in a subsequent rate case, we wanted to make sure that the company understood the expectations in South Carolina. And those expectations are that they are providing service improvements and enhancements when they're making their investments in the system, that they are for the customer's benefit. And to do that, you need to make sure that there's no wasteful duplication or gold plating of systems that occur. Some of these systems are very small, 85 customers, for example, and those customers don't know what a rate increase looks like. So the investment that the company puts in will need to be scrutinized to make sure that the customers actually benefit from what the company is investing into the system.
Thank you. And that brings to mind another question that I suspect someone else up here wants to ask you. And that is, do you know the numbers of customers in each of the 4 utilities?
I do. I could quickly run through those. They're listed in Dan Hennell's direct testimony. So just in general and off the top of my head, I think when you're looking at Tessie, you're looking at around 500 customers. When you're looking at AAA, a little bit over 400. And then when you're looking at Hamilton Haynes and Hyde Park, those are 100 or less, slightly less than 100 customers.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Any further questions? Ms. Hipp, thank you, and you can step down.
Thank you.
All right, is there any other housekeeping matters, anything we need to address while we got you?
I don't think so, other than to just, and if you think it's me giving testimony, then just cut me off, or just is that there is a docket that's been open to consider the customer service contract, submitting that. And this is all referenced in the stipulation. There's also likely to be some a third-party management, operations and management contract that will be submitted to the commission for approval. And it may have a separate docket, but those are listed in the stipulation, is the idea that those will be subject to the same commission review that other third-party contracts receive.
All right, thank you.
So just to
Let's
close
give
that
us
loop.
anything from ORS.
Nothing further from ORS, Vice Chair Powers. Thank you.
Okay, I see you voted this morning.
I did, Vice Chair Powers.
What time?
About 7:43.
Okay, I was the first one in Florence, and I got there at 6:15.
I don't know my place in line, but it seemed like the line moved quickly.
Well, good. Well, thank you all for your presentation. Thank you for your patience today and getting all of this into the record. We would thank those who are listening online and otherwise, and would say that hope you all have a good day and good luck. that would close this hearing. Thank you.